Some people like to think that the deep web is a joke. It's not. In no way is it a place some half-assed show-off should even think about stumbling into. In fact, I would tell even the most seasoned of hackers with any fiber of a moral compass to stay the fuck away from that place. Because it's a place that will scar you and leave you terrified to follow the cyber footprints left by someone else's shadow ever again. I know this because I'm a hacker, or at least I used to be one. I had been using computers since I was 12 years old. I had always been fascinated with the idea of being a cyber crusader, determined to find the new uncharted territories of the internet. I'd gotten pretty good at utilizing bits of software here and there, and it even got to the point where the slow crawl of dial-up internet didn't even affect me anymore. Especially when you knew what processes you wanted active and which ones you could afford to kill to increase the crawl rate of your PC. In other words, I had a pretty good idea of what I was doing. By the time I was 20 years old, I could both safely and confidently call myself an ace when it came to hacking. I could keep up with the best and had made a name for myself among many other netizens on the web. In fact, I was among the few thousands who had managed to come up with the formula to hack the Google search bar in order to delve deeper into the directories to get what we wanted. Call it our own personal attack for having bought the rights for YouTube and slapping content creators with copyright infringements left and right. The early years of YouTube back then were not pretty. I had my channel taken down several times because of Google's little purchase. But that's neither here nor there. This plays no bearing on the story. I'm simply giving you a little history lesson, especially for all the younger netizens out there. Anyone who was a hacker knew about the deep web. It pretty much had the same purpose as most would speculate it does today. Drugs, guns, illegal imports, you name it, and that place pretty much had it. The deep web was, and is, the gateway into what is known as the global black market. I had purchased a few imported goods during that time and had a decent amount of drugs. It was about halfway through the first semester at my school. Sophomore year of college was my time to be stoned almost constantly, so I was a regular customer on the digital black market. Most of my friends came to me for the hookup, and I could always cut them a pretty good deal based on my frequent interactions with sellers on the net. To access the deep web, you didn't have things like Tor browsers, not back then. To access the darker side of the web, you needed to know what you were doing. Ghost hacking, proxies, parent directories, backdoors, scramblers, dump sites. These are all terms hackers utilized years back and when Java was not as prevalent in browsers as they are today. Back in the day, it was often referred to as the dark net. I don't know when it transitioned into the deep web and I don't really care. I'm never going back. I had just gotten some new equipment for my computer. The CRT I had been using finally quit, and after ordering a new monitor and some more RAM, I was pretty set to go. My plan was to try and barter for a better sound card when I could afford it with the vendors I went to on the dark net. I was setting up to do a little bit of gaming when I noticed I had an alert from one of my net friends saying they had stumbled across something interesting. A series of black boxes that, when opened, seemed to lead you down another web directory. It was like tunneling, but more vast. Knowing my curious nature, he had passed the information on to me, knowing I would want to follow up on this information. I was one of the few vagrant hackers in my circle, an explorer, mindlessly taking one path and then another and opening up a door and seeing where it goes. Most times you would come across a treasure trove of information, or a dead end. He hadn't cut any corners when he broke down everything to me. His start point, the different pathways he had taken, how often he had reset his IP address per 30 to 45 seconds, what protocols he had used to cover up his trail, and the level of encryption that he had encountered with each box and how long it had taken him to reach the next one. 7 boxes he had come across, and upon reaching the 7th is where he'd gotten stuck. Challenge accepted. I quickly glanced over the data, already booting up the ghost hacks and IP scramblers. I needed to have what was in front of me knocked out of the way, as well as being able to cover my own ass. With the new encryption I had made, I would be able to latch onto an existing IP address for 30 seconds before bouncing to another one, making it seem like I had disappeared. This was great in theory, but forced my movements to be slow when it came to being able to do things on my sad little Inspiron. In 10 short minutes, I was ready to go. Like he had shown me, I followed his pathways and activated my encryptions to keep myself safe, wandering from parent directory to parent directory. It didn't take long for me to run into the first black box. Just a basic encryption that took almost no time to break through. Inside was a directory with 4 different subdirectories. I knew that the second link was where my friend went, but my curiosity led me to pick the first one. In about 3 minutes, I realized it was a dead end, so I quickly backtracked and made my way to the main directory, deciding that I wouldn't deviate from his original path. In about half an hour, I ran through all 6 black boxes, coming across the 7th and realized that the encryption on this particular box was very different. Every hacker, no matter how good, leaves a sliver of information behind. You just have to know what to look for. I knew my friend had been here and this is where he had gotten stuck. This was a unique lock, one that I knew would take a bit of time to break through the encryption. It was a Thursday night, I'd finished up my work early for a change and I wasn't called into work, so I had time to kill. Now this box was a tricky little shit. I had never run across so many tedious things to break through in my entire life. It was more annoying than an actual challenge. A tug here, a pull there, slipping and dipping and moving around all the different codes in an attempt to decipher just what all this information entailed. But I wasn't allowed the luxury of lingering because the minute I got distracted to see and understand what exactly I was swimming through, the encryption would completely kick me out of the box, forcing me to start all over again. After another 45 minutes, I managed to break through and I felt like I was sitting on top of the world, but the only problem was that I was in another directory again. Except this time, there was only one thing inside of it. It was a redirect hyperlink labeled WTTMH. I was too happy to know I'd broken through the damn encryption code blocking this pathway that I didn't even stop to think and wonder what those letters meant. Like a fucking pleb, I just clicked on the link and let it redirect me. My ghost was active, so I wasn't worried about being traced. It did its thing, redirecting me to another website. This site took a little bit longer to load. Possibly because my ghost was attempting to filter and tunnel through anything that would have pinged me on someone's radar. This was also an indication that I had entered through a back door. One that I really didn't have any business utilizing, but I did anyway. When messing around in the darknet, you only ever use the back entrance onto pages if you thought you were the shit and didn't think you'd get caught. That, or you were the site manager themselves. About 5 minutes later, the webpage finally loaded up. Soft, creepy carnival music played in the background, barely above the sound of a whisper. Even with headphones on, I had to really pay attention to take notice of it. Across the window, in big bold letters, read, "Welcome to the Monkey House." I was immediately intrigued. Being the huge Kurt Vonnegut fan that I am, I recognized the title for what it was. But for anyone who has read the compilation of short stories, I assumed I was about to walk into a place full of rebels, preaching on their soapboxes like they were Harrison Bergeron. I wished that had been the case. I wished it more than anything, now that I think back on it. A window popped up on the bottom right of the browser, a chat window and a greeting message. I'll never forget the way my heart almost shrank in on itself in response to that gray box. It read, "Welcome to the Monkey House, home of all the chills and thrills you can imagine and some even beyond your wildest dreams. Would you like a guided tour?"